All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Living the Dream podcast. Today on the show, we have Brian Dement, who is the CEO of Salt and Light and the author of Bitcoin Evangelism. Brian, how you doing?
I'm well, Timmy. It's a pleasure to be on the show. I appreciate it.
Of course, man. Happy to have you on, and we like to jump right in. So if you could start with telling us a little bit more about yourself and what you like to do for fun, that'd be great.
Well, I've been an entrepreneur for 14 years. So I started, my wife and I started our first business when we were 22, right out of college. We had saved up a bunch of money through college to buy a house, but that was during the 2008 financial crisis. Nobody was going to give us a loan for a house. And that turned out to be one of the best things ever because we took that capital. We started investing in our first business, and that's snowballed into a chain of locations. We invest with our with Salt and Light. We invest in small local businesses. We help with operations and really to kind of reaffirm our community, kind of help create robust business locally where we live. So that's been really cool. And then about 10 years ago, I became fascinated with Bitcoin. I actually was really skeptical of it at first, and through my study of it, a deeper study of it, it won me over. And so I was a Bitcoin skeptic, now very much a Bitcoin evangelist out there trying to tell people what it is, because there's a lot of misconceptions about it, especially right now. There's a lot of headlines about crypto as an industry is in the headlines. There's a lot of fraud. There's a lot of exchanges that are doing really shady things right now. Bitcoin is actually the first ever moral monetary system we've ever had. And so I think it's really important. I'm a Christian, and so I believe that economic systems matter. I think the Bible talks consistently through Proverbs about unbalanced weights. I think it's something that God really doesn't like is unbalanced weights, and you hear that multiple times throughout the Proverbs. And in fact, the only time when Jesus in his earthly ministry, the only time he ever shows righteous anger, he just absolutely mad, was when people were doing a morally corrupt financial system inside of the temple. When the money changers in the temple were ripping people off, Jesus goes in and throws over the tables, fashions a whip, and actually whips these guys out of the temple. So I do believe it's partly out of my religious conviction, but also partly out of my just American ideals, that I think people should have a fair set of rules that provide for an equal playing field for everybody. So anyways, yeah, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about it. I think it is important. And yeah, that's why I'm out doing the book tour right now. The book's done really well. It's been on the Amazon bestsellers list since the second month it came out.
I gotcha. I gotcha. So would you say that's kind of your passion project? Like that's what you do for fun, kind of dive in and share about Bitcoin?
Yeah, that's I've been on the book tour since that launched in June. And so I've been doing conferences. I've been going to some little speaking engagements and stuff like that. And so that's been my main focus for the last 6 months or so. Because I think we're in a really strange economic time. There's all sorts of weird things going on. We've got war in Ukraine, we've got inflation, we've got all these kind of macro factors, big economic factors that are converging right now. And I think it's more important now than ever to help educate people, to help level people up when it comes to financial education. In addition to that, it's allowed me to venture outside even of the US. So we sponsor a young man named Alexander, and he's in four countries in Southern Africa, and he's going around and essentially helping to educate Africans on just general financial education, but also on Bitcoin and how they can use technology to kind of leapfrog the old system. In developing nations, it's one of the really cool things with technology is sometimes in developing nations, they skip entire generations of technology. For example, in Africa, there was never really landline telephones. But in Africa, smartphones are prevalent. Like sometimes the technology is so good that developing nations are able to leapfrog a generation. A lot of Africans are unbanked, but Bitcoin is helping to bank Africans on a level that we'd never seen before. So they're actually like leapfrogging the whole banking era and going straight to digital currencies, and it's unlocking a lot of financial freedom for people. This young man, Alexander, he has this really cool quote. I think it's an African adage, and I'm going to probably butcher it a little bit, but what he says is, there was once an African man, and he was given two things. He was given gold and he was given wisdom. And the reason why this is this is a popular adage, because in Africa, they have abundant resources. They have a lot of resources, but Africa has always been kind of subjugated by other nations. And so why does Africa typically remain poor in many areas? And so the adage goes, yeah, an African was given two things. He was given gold and he was given wisdom. And he forgot the wisdom and then he spent the gold. And it's just this really sad adage about how Africa has had these things at their fingertips, but there was just never that financial education that came along with it, because there was just a lot of subjugation by outside forces. And so now we're seeing an equal playing field, probably for the first time in Africa's history, where they're able to compete on a worldwide scale. So there's some really, really cool things happening in the Southern African countries with Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've heard about some crypto stuff and digital currency stuff helping out tech in Africa, but I didn't know it was to that extent. So that is really awesome to hear, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Tell us a bit more about your motivation. What really gets you up and keeps you going every day?
Yeah, so I get to get up and do a few different things. I have 4 kids, so I love being a dad. We homeschool, and you can see behind me, we got this whole wall behind me, is our desk for the homeschool. My wife is a phenomenal teacher, and so I get to be the entrepreneur that has a flexible schedule, and I get to participate in my kids' education to some degree. I usually get to take over PE, so 3 days a week we do Jiu Jitsu. A couple of days a week we do it out in the garage. So actually, in a little while here, we have another Jiu Jitsu class tonight. So I get to help train the kids, which is awesome. My kids love to wrestle, and so it's a lot of fun. And so just being able to disciple my kids, to pour into my kids, is a huge motivator for me. I think it also that translates into how I see other people. I used to view entrepreneurship and business as something to make money, advance, and basically you would help other people by giving them a good product or service. Like that was kind of the extent of where you help people. And in doing that, in providing a good product or service, like capitalism says that, like, if you do that well enough, then you're going to make money at it. And so my end goal with entrepreneurship early on was very much just like to be successful, and judging that based off of how much money I made. But now, being a father, seeing other people, seeing my employees or customers through the lens of kind of a fatherly eyes, I really want to help develop other people. I think it's really important. I think there's a lot of people. I was raised by a mom, single mom, and I didn't have a dad pouring into me. And so I think it's really important as men. I think there's a lot of need for women in influence too, but I think there's a huge calling for men that have a passion for other people, to give our time and our skills and whatever wisdom we have and pass that on to other people. And we have interactions every single day where we're able to interact with people and just pass on maybe little snippets of wisdom. And sometimes it's taking them aside and hopefully pouring out a big lesson, but sometimes it's just little interactions. So to me, that is a huge motivation. And it kind of keeps me on my toes, no matter what gear I'm in, whether I'm in dad mode, whether I'm in business mode, whether I'm in Bitcoin mode, or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So you love being a dad, you love the discipling your kids part specifically of being a dad, but also just getting to pour into other people and build them up with that fatherly lens is kind of the stuff that gets you up and keeps you going.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it, man. I love it. I'm curious. I usually don't ask questions like these, but you seem like you are really strong in your faith, and everybody typically has a journey when they get to that point of being strong in their faith. So I'm curious what some of the barriers to your strong belief were. So what were some of the hurdles you had to jump about your conception about who God is in your life? What were some of the truths you had to know to get closer with him?
That's a great question, man. Really, really good question. So I'm not going to bring every answer back to Bitcoin, but in the way that I said earlier, with Bitcoin, I was really skeptical at first. And then through my study of Bitcoin, I became a Bitcoin believer, a Bitcoin evangelist, because I thought it was really important. I was very much that way with my faith. I like to pride myself on being I'm not an academic person. I don't know. I like to think of myself as somebody that thinks through things, right? I don't just take something at face value. And so I was very resistant to, I think, God's calling to, before I was a Christian. I think Christianity sounded kind of woo-woo to me. It sounded like a little mystical. And so there's a lot of reason to from the outside before you dig into the Bible, there's a lot of reason to doubt it, right? Because you just hear like little tidbits of stories and they just sound crazy and fantastical, and it sounds like somebody just made them up. But when you dig into it, you can see the weightiness and the truth to it, and you see how powerful this movement that God's done throughout time. There's just this linear, consistent story throughout history that as far as recorded history basically goes back. God's been working through that. And to me that was really powerful. And so that's what kind of drew me in in the first place. But then even once I became a Christian, I think one of the things that was preventing me from really having a super deep conviction and being kind of more fearless, I guess, in my faith, was just those doubts, like the general questions that young people have about God, like how can a loving God send people to hell, or how can how can we rely on the Bible, like how do we know it's an accurate source, and those types of things. And I think it's really important for us to challenge those things and ask those questions. I think a lot of people are afraid that they might find the answer leads them away from God, and so they don't challenge their faith. Like they're just kind of scared, so they stay in this middle ground, this like lukewarm area. But I think that if you dive in and you genuinely try to study those questions, I think you come out on the other side refined. Like it's like metal going through a refining fire. And studying and just little things like this. Like one of the biggest, I think, apologetics points from scripture that I saw that was really encouraging to me was when I doubted maybe the reliability of the gospel account, is the reaction of the apostles towards Jesus before the resurrection and after the resurrection. Like the disciples were written about, and if they were fabricating a story, if they were just making something up, they would have made themselves look like heroes from the get-go, but they looked like idiots and fools all the way through Jesus's ministry. And they even showed to be cowards. Like they denied Jesus in the most important time. And then where they wouldn't even want to be seen with Jesus, somehow on the other side of Jesus dying, something happened. And now the disciples or the apostles were so sold out for Christ that they were willing to die and be tortured for that, whatever they saw. And so to me, that's a really powerful, like inferential point, that it's not taking what the Bible says for granted. Like, oh, the Bible told me this, and so I'm going to believe it. It's like, no, you can like examine, you can cross-examine the Bible. You can put the Bible on the stand and question it. And because it's truth, it lives up to that validity. I love to interact with Mormon missionaries. And one of the things with Mormon missionaries I find is that they don't like to challenge on like an academic level. When I ask them something about, scripture, they just kind of keep coming back to this idea of, well, we're really just all about asking God in our heart if this is real or not. And so there's certain faiths that really try to suss out any kind of questioning or any kind of analysis of it. But that's what I love about the Christian church, is that in Christianity, we're about being bold in the truth of scripture. Like scripture is true. It's going to stand up to my weak little challenges. Right. And so that process was really encouraging to me. And so I feel confident that I can go into a boardroom meeting with other men that I highly respect, or I can go into a room with people that are maybe physically intimidating, and I could talk about God and I could share about my faith because I genuinely believe it's true. And there was a point where I didn't quite know that. But I was willing to challenge it, and I feel a lot more grounded in my faith because of that.
Gotcha. So once you got in, apologetics really helped you kind of get that conviction that you have now of like, man, I am so confident in this because I've been through it and I've been refined as a Christian.
Yeah. And that was early on. That was a process I went through, but I've also seen God actually work in my life. So I have seen that mystical woo stuff play out in my life, where I'm just like, I mean, I have some stories where I don't like to be the guy that walks around and be like, God talked to me, or this happened. But I had some moments in my life where God directed my steps as clear as day. And I'm so grateful he did. Like things could have turned out really wrong or really bad had he not directed those steps. And so I've seen the evidence in my life. So I've seen and felt the presence of God, but then I can also on an academic or analytical level challenge it. So I've seen both sides of that. But yeah, I think that was the first step. The first step was to challenge those doubts.
And what took you from skeptical into Christianity again? I'm trying to remember, but I need you to run it back for me.
Really, like I wasn't that skeptical before I became a Christian. I just never really thought about my like I think I just thought I'm an American, so I'm a Christian type of thing. I grew up in a house that didn't really go to church, and so that until I was in middle school, maybe early high school, I'd never even thought about these things. And so it wasn't until I started going to church that I kind of became skeptical. And I wasn't probably I was maybe a seeking person at that point, but I wasn't skeptical until a little bit later on. So there was a whole like cascade of things that happened. You know, there was a lot of social things as well. You know, I had a friend group come around me that welcomed me into the church. So it was kind of a weird time in my life where I was being welcomed into the church, but I didn't know like what I was getting into and stuff. So yeah. So how did I go from non-believer? It was like I wasn't really a skeptic until I was like approaching the faith in a serious way. So I don't know how to articulate that very well, but yeah, before I was just oblivious. So like previous in my life, I was just completely oblivious to God.
I got you. I got you. So there wasn't a lot of resistance to going to church in the first place, but when you
Right.
got there, skepticism started building. That's when apologetics kicked in.
Yes.
You grew more firm, and you also experienced God actually working in your life throughout that process.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, man. Love to hear it. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I love chatting about it.
Cool, man. Well, let's go ahead and jump into your dreams and goals now. Tell us about your vision for your life and your company.
Well, that's another fun question. Um, I feel like I'm at a crossroad right now in my life. I think I'm at a point right now where sounds weird, but I'm praying pretty consistently for God to close doors in my life. Now that sounds strange. There was a time where all I would pray is, God, please open up more doors. Please open up more doors. I'm 36 now, so I'm not old, but I'm not super young either. And I remember thinking throughout my 20s, you know what? Nobody like I was a pretty respected guy. I feel like in my 20s, I was already an entrepreneur and stuff like that. But I could see that even if if I said something, like people still kind of treated me like I was the young guy. So I told myself in my 20s, I'm gonna hustle, I'm gonna grind, I'm gonna work hard. Because by my 30s, I'll have experience under my belt. But then by my 30s, maybe people take me a little bit more serious too, because there's just an age thing. Like it doesn't matter how smart you are, how good you are, or whatever. There's always gonna be like he's 23, he's 25, that kind of thing. And so back then I was just always praying for God to open doors, and he's graciously opened many, many doors. I've been able to do lots of different things. I've done MMA fights. I've gotten to do like competitive snowboarding in my life. I've gotten to do all sorts of really wacky and off the wall kinds of things, because God's just allowed me to pursue different passions and fun things in my life along with entrepreneurship. But now I'm at a point where I want God to like hyper focus the next chapter of my life. I think that without sounding doom and gloom, I'm actually not doom and gloom, but there's a lot of, like I said earlier, a convergence of a lot of really massive economic factors coming into the world right now. And so I'm asking him consistently to like narrow my focus to help the most amount of people through this next era, whatever that is, whether that's a short era. I don't know if that's a year long or if that's 5 years or 10 years. And I really see we're at the end of a 100-year cycle of debt. And I mean, we can get more into economic stuff if you want. But there comes, if you study economic history, there's essentially currencies, they go through life cycles, and we're getting towards the end of the US dollar currency. And so I see that in those times, kind of like Joseph in Egypt. I don't know how familiar everybody is with the Joseph in Egypt. Hopefully everybody remembers their Sunday school from when they were kids. But Joseph, he became the number 2 most influential person under Pharaoh. And God gave him a vision that, and I'm not saying that God gave me a vision. I studied this from history, but God gave Joseph a vision that there was going to be famine. And so he encouraged Pharaoh to store up grain. And so when the famine came, Egypt was a powerhouse. They had surplus goods so that they could help the most people. People from all over the world came to get and do business and barter and get some of the grains that Egypt had, because they had a vast resource of that. I see something like that coming. And so that's the doom and gloom part. But that's why I call my book Bitcoin Evangelism, because there's the, just like with the gospel, and Bitcoin's not equivalent to the gospel, but in the same way that to understand the gospel, you need to understand the bad news in order to understand the good news. With what's going on nowadays, there's lots of bad news. There's lots of terrible things that can happen, but we do have a technological advantage that we never had. And so my dream right now is the next 2 to 3 years, I see myself being an educator and helping people understand finances, helping people understand, not in order to get rich, not in order to go out and like, hey, I'm going to make you a millionaire overnight, but to have a good and robust understanding of how sound money works. It's going to be the number one way that people can protect their families. It's the number one way that churches are going to be able to be like Joseph in Egypt and get, to store up resources so that churches can do ministry on a level that they never thought they could do before, because people will be in need of what they have. So I think it's really important. We're at this critical time in history where, I want to help people understand this as much as possible.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that. And so we got so far praying for God to close some doors in your life, narrow your focus so you can help as many people as possible in the next chapter of your life. Any other dreams or goals that you want to chat about?
Well, as in terms of a short-term goal, I mentioned earlier I did MMA back in the day. I still do competitive Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I love to grapple, and so I have next month I have the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu World Championships in Southern California. So it's people come from all over the world, and it's in Anaheim. And so I'm in training right now for that. So my short-term like fun goal, as far as just things I get to do that are fun, that really drive me and motivate me. It's that. And so there's such a strange thing that happens when you go and compete in jiu-jitsu. It's a weird thing that the first time you meet this person, you're like, you're doing combat with them. And it's really strange. And you see this person and you go hard and you fight and wrestle for, 5-6 minutes or however long the match is. And then afterwards, I've seen this 100% of the time, there's a weird deep connection that happens after you do combat with somebody, and you're always friends afterwards. Like, it always is this thing where like, okay, all right, man, that was a great match. Like, what's your Instagram or what's your, are you on Facebook? Are you on Twitter? That sort of thing. And, it's so funny. Actually last night I did an episode for my YouTube channel where, about a week ago, the first guy ever that I fought in MMA, we had a really good fight. I mean, it was a really competitive fight, but we just beat each other up back, this is like 8-9 years ago. And he reached out to me and he's like, hey man, I have some questions about Bitcoin and economics and stuff like that. I said, hey, can I film this? Can we like record this? And so we have an interview where like, I haven't seen this guy for 8 or 9 years. And the last time we got together, we were fighting each other, but now we're homies and we're talking about, being dads and economics and all this kind of stuff. So it sounds weird. It sounds like totally bro, like, oh yeah, I like to fight with people. But I find that it's like when two brothers wrestle and hash it out, like something happens. You bond on a different level. So it's my strange passion.
Hey, there you go. I love it. So you trying to win the championship? You're just trying to have a good performance? You just
I'm trying to win, man. I feel like my training's been really good. I've been training with some world-class guys, and I've been doing pretty well. And so I'm feeling my confidence is at 100 right now, and I'm in good shape. I'm a pretty big dude. I'm 6'5", like 215 pounds. And so, I just feel like I'm pretty lean right now, and I feel strong and fast and all that kind of stuff. So I'm ready to get after it. It's so funny, man. I know people that like aren't into martial arts and stuff like that. I don't know where you sit on that, but they're just like, you just said you want to help people, and then like your passion is like fighting people. And it's like there's almost a yin and a yang to it. But it all ends in a pretty positive vibe. So yeah.
I love it. What's that really popular Brazilian jiu-jitsu school? Because I know David Green from the Bigger Pockets podcast has taken up jiu-jitsu, and it's like for some reason the name Katie is popping up in my
Is
head.
it Gracie?
Yes.
Gracie. Yeah. Yeah. So the Gracie family, they started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as we know it back in like the 60s, and they brought it to the United States. and they just started training people out of their garage. Like they went to Torrance, California. It's like pretty close to LA, and they were training celebrities like Al Bundy from the show Married with Children was like one of their early students, and like just random celebrities like that. And so it grew and grew and grew. And they were actually the family that started the UFC. And so that, yeah, they had a challenge like before the UFC existed. They would put out an ad in Black Belt magazine. They said, "We think we have the most powerful martial art, and we're willing to challenge anybody that wants to come to our dojo. We'll give you $10,000 if you can beat us." And they had this in there, and people would show up and they would just record it on VHS, like old school cameras. And they made a ton of money. And then a Hollywood agency saw these videotapes, and they said, "Would you like to do this in a one-night tournament?" And so there's this whole cool story about how the UFC started and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that Gracie family, they were the ones that started it all.
There we go. That is so cool. Yeah. Are like people who are they going to be there at the World Championships?
The Gracie family is huge. So there will be people from the Gracie family, but man, we'll have to do like a whole episode on this one time, or just even talk off air, because it's a long story. I've read like the family history of them. There's probably like 300 Gracie family members in existence right now. Like they're everywhere. And it's by design. The patriarchs, it was two brothers. This was a couple generations ago now, but they actually like it gets kind of weird and twisted, but they actually like had a harem of women that they would go out and find like the best, most athletic women, and they would like breed with them to create these super athletes. It's that part's very weird, and I'm not like endorsing that by any means, but they're like these superior Brazilian athletes that came to the United States. So it's very strange in how it started, but to say that like this family intentionally bred, and so yeah, there's a lot of them. Yeah,
That is crazy. That's wild. But, that is by far not the craziest thing you hear about history at all.
no,
So,
no, no.
cool, man. Well, what are the top 1 to 2 skills that are required for you to develop right now to make your
Mm.
dreams and goals come true?
So it's funny when you see, like, I used to always see businessmen, and if they ran a successful business, I remember thinking, okay, I need to go ask that guy everything, because I guarantee he has every answer. Like every skill you need in business, he's probably a master at. And as time's gone on and I've gotten to know more successful business people, that couldn't be further from the truth. So, and it's certainly not true with me. When it comes to accounting and like the financial side, and it's funny because like the financial side of business, in terms of like balance sheets and profit and losses and like really digging into the books, like that's something that I'm constantly like learning more about, and like learning how to fine tune that element of it. Cause I didn't go to school for business. And so I think I kind of had the like just get it done type of mentality. And so I'm even finding myself, somebody who's been an entrepreneur for 14 years, going back and like having to learn the basics on certain things, and just like, okay, what's the appropriate way to read a balance sheet in my business to understand, how successful is my business right now? Like, I know, we've been growing and we've been opening more locations and all that kind of stuff, but like, did the financial sheets really justify that and stuff? And so, the skill that I've had, thankfully, that's gotten me to this point that I was okay at was, I was always in, I think it was Dale Carnegie, or there's some famous person, and maybe it was Andrew Carnegie, the steel guy back in like the 1800s. But he said that he goes, "I'm not the best, I'm not the brightest." And this guy was super, super wealthy. He goes, "But I'm really good at getting the best people around me." And so that's something I've always been pretty good at, is finding people that can do a job and that can like be the perfect fit for our team. But as time goes on, I want to be more developed in each of those areas, because I feel like I can help and coach people better in their roles. Right. And I know how to look for those people and extract their value to the company a little bit better if I can be more proficient in each area. So yeah, here I am, a 14-year entrepreneur that probably needs to learn the financial side of business. I know economics, I know macroeconomics, I know how the stock market works, I know how monetary systems work, so it sounds like I should be like an economic or a financial wizard, but there's microeconomics that I'm still learning very much.
I got you. I got you. Okay. And what are the highest impact daily actions that will tick the needle forward toward your dreams and goals?
When I get up, if I make my bed, I'm like, that's probably the number one thing I can do. Starting by the day by being proactive, by not delaying getting stuff done. Because it's so easy. I found that in seasons of my life where I'm just like, you know what? I'm kind of mill it in the first part of the day. That's just that I'm not productive. I'm not effective that way. And I find that like the day gets away from me and I lose a tremendous amount of productivity. So as far as for me being effective in any area, whether that's like the sports that I'm in, whether that's in business, whether that's when I was like writing my book or now that I'm like promoting the book and all that kind of stuff, I need to get up and get after it on the day. And then I find that my productivity goes up exponentially. It's not just like, you would think if I lost the first half of the day, but I worked the second half of the day, that like I would only get half the work done. No, like I get like 4 or 5 times more work done when I am effective at the first part of the day. Like I could even take the later part of the day and kind of like slow down in the later part of the day. But there's something that happens. Like I do a lot of like study on flow state. I don't know if you've ever studied flow state, but man, your ability to, when you get locked into a rhythm and you can turn off your phone or keep your phone in another room and remove distractions from you and get in a really productive mode. Yeah. You don't just become twice as effective or 50% more effective. You become hundreds of percent more effective at getting things done and absorbing information and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's a really important discipline that I need to have. So I say making the bed, but that's just because it's like the first thing you can possibly do, right? Like if I wake up with the mentality of like, I'm just going to let the bed go this morning, like that snowballs into a bunch of other really small, microscopic bad decisions that lead into bigger bad decisions.
I love it. Have you ever read Deep Work by Cal Newport?
No, I've never read that. What's it
Oh,
about?
gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it talks about that flow state and flexing the muscle of doing deep
Mm.
work. And he blocks,
Huh.
like, if you do 2 90-minute sessions of deep work every day for the rest of your life, you will be eons ahead of
Mm.
everybody you're competing with. Because when you can get into that flow state and you know the muscle and you know how to get in the muscle and you're like doing it at the same time in the same place every day, your body gets in the habit of it, you'll just be a beast. So
Yeah. What's the name of that book again, or the author?
Cal Newport.
Cal Newport. Okay. Well, I'm gonna have
Deep
to
work.
look it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sure if you know about flow state though, you've read some other books that are essentially gonna have the same info,
I
but
was gonna say, yeah, that synopsis sounds like, definitely have heard that before, but it's always fun to hear different people's takes on it. So
oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. There we go. Well, what is the character trait that you most need to develop right now to make your dream life come true?
Man. Um, hmm. Sorry, I like to have a faster answer for you.
Oh no, you're all good.
So you said the character trait that I need to develop to make my goals, to
Yep.
accomplish my goals.
And like patience, discipline, focus,
Mm.
consistency, accountability, those are some of them. You might have a lot of those already honed in since you've been in the game for 14
Yeah,
years, but
no, man, I'm not. Yeah, I don't want to be arrogant. Like that's because there's always areas of weakness. You know what? You brought up accountability. I'd say that when you get into a leadership role, I think people are afraid to challenge you a little bit. And so I think that's an area that I have to be more mindful to encourage people to challenge me. Because yeah, my employees, like, they don't want to pop off to the boss, or like people that I'm helping in business. Like if I'm doing a nice thing and I'm going out of my way to help them, I might say something and they're just like, I don't think that's right. But he's being nice and he's helping me. So I need to just listen. Like I need to be cognizant about encouraging people to either challenge me or to hold me accountable. If I said I'm going to do something and then I don't do it. I do have a few employees that will do that, like managers and stuff like that, that over the year we've developed a relationship where they feel like they can call me out. And I find that those interactions are very effective, but not necessarily everybody in my life probably feels like they have that same kind of access. Where if they were to ask me, like they absolutely do, but I probably don't go out of my way to tell them that as much as I could. So accountability. I'm glad you brought that up because I think that is important.
love it. There you
And
go.
and so on the flip side, if you're somebody that works for somebody, then don't be afraid to hold people accountable. Like Don't be rude, like I've had employees there or people that I've worked with or whatever that maybe what they said was right, but they were just being really vindictive maybe in the way that they said it. And I'm like, just like, okay, what you said wasn't wrong, but like if the point is to have a peaceable resolution going forward and like to have a constructive criticism, like please just be like more respectful. So if you come at your boss or you come, want to hold somebody accountable that maybe is above you, by all means, feel free to do that. They actually will probably respect you a heck of a lot more. Just do it with tact. Just do it in love. And it's pretty hard to dismiss something that somebody says when they're right and when they're being humble about it. So that would be permission on both sides. If you're the boss, invite people to hold you accountable. If you're not the boss, feel free to hold them accountable. Just be smart about it.
There we go. I love it. Yeah, it can always be intimidating to hold somebody in authority accountable, especially if they are a bad boss, right? Like there are some bosses out there that are just bad bosses and are emotional or don't give that space. So be smart about it, like Brian said, for sure. Oh, also read How to Win Friends and Influence People if you're curious about how to do it.
Dude, you know what? That's crazy you said that. I've just finished chapter 1 today. I've read it before. I've read it like multiple times. I was just listening to the audiobook. I put it in my car. I'm like, I'm going to listen to how to Win Friends and Influence People today. That's so funny you said that. I just listened to it like 3 hours ago.
Yeah, such a good book. Such a good book. Yeah, I love it. Well, awesome. Before we move on to the next question, I want to hear more about um, the business you started at 22. So we've kind of heard about Bitcoin Evangelism. We've heard about Salt and Light. Tell us about the business you started that is like opening up more locations and stuff.
Yeah, so there's a reason why, because I don't talk about that business. Well, it's a cool business now, but it sounds really funny. It was my wife's idea, but when we came out of college, we started a tanning salon, and so it is one of those people who are like tanning salon, right? So what we recognized early on was that our customers, like, yeah, you would get the older lady that was coming in for a tan before she went to Hawaii and that sort of thing, but we were in a part of Southern California where there was actually a lot of professional athletes, a lot of motocross guys, a lot of MMA. That's actually why I got into MMA, because a lot of our customers were these athletes and stuff. And so they were coming in, and the first time I can remember professional athletes coming in for tanning services for some sort of therapeutic reason was I had these 3 customers that were from Thailand. They were Muay Thai fighters, and they were very dark skinned already. And I said, hey, we'd see them every week, and they'd come in. And I just asked one day, I'm like, yeah, I know you guys said you guys are fighters, but like, if you don't mind me asking, trust me, I don't mind the business, but like, you guys already you're already pretty dark. Like, why are you getting, more tan? And what they said was, when they would go to these fights, they would, when your opponent kicks you in the leg, if you have lighter skin, your skin reddens more. And so the judges at the end of the fight would see, oh, they have all these red marks all over them. And so they would get decisions voted against them by the judges. And so the darker they could be, it would show less damage on their body. And so it was just this weird concept. So that was kind of a funny early story. But then, yeah, we got more and more athletes coming in. And it's because people are starting to wake up to the importance of vitamin D. And so vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin. So people, when they take it orally, not everybody synthesizes vitamin D the same way. And so the best way that you can get vitamin D, your skin regulates it better than any other type. And so you have to be smart about it, because if you overdo it, you can damage your skin. And if you damage your skin enough times, then you can get things like skin cancer and skin aging and all that kind of stuff. But if it's like broccoli is really healthy for you. But if all I eat is broccoli and I just gorge myself on broccoli, I'm going to die of malnutrition. Like there's a healthy way to eat broccoli and an unhealthy way to eat broccoli. Same thing with sunshine. And so we got more and more customers coming in for like therapeutic, like their doctors would prescribe them to come in because they would be, seasonally depressed, or they would have low vitamin D, and therefore they'd be at higher cancer risks and things like that. And it's a crazy concept. Like that was mind blowing to me, that doctors were actually encouraging tanning to prevent cancer, not to, because I always heard like, oh, give you cancer. But then a few years after that, we diverted from a tanning salon into a light therapies business. And so we started getting into infrared saunas for people that had arthritis and muscular recovery issues, or people that were post-workout and they wanted to recover faster, or they were detoxing. We do infrared saunas, and we also do things called red light therapy. So it kind of looks like a tanning bed, but it's all hyper intense red light, and it helps heal scarring. It helps things, skin conditions like psoriasis and all sorts of things like that. So, yeah, the business took off and it started growing. Like when we were a tanning salon, people were kind of interested in it. But when we became a light therapy business and we started helping people with all sorts of conditions that they were previously taking medication for, like that's the coolest thing ever. When somebody has arthritis and they said they've been taking pain medication for the last 10 years. And because they're using the infrared sauna, they don't have to take pain medication anymore. That's awesome. That was super rewarding. And so once we leaned into the light therapy side of the business, that's when it started growing. So we have a few locations in Southern California right now. We're in the process of developing another one right now. And so, yeah, it's just been good and it's been growing. And that my encouragement to people is to constantly, if you ever start a business, or if you're, I mean, this is any type of work you're in, think about how you can develop your role. Like if you're an entrepreneur, how can you develop your business? How can you keep up with the times, or how can you evolve to where the market's heading? Same thing in your role. I mean, you could be an accountant, you could be in any position in a company, but you can look outside of the box. I mean, it would have never crossed my mind a couple years before to start a light therapy business, but it was by going into the tanning business, and then we saw a niche market. It was niche at the time, and it's actually become a very big market. But we saw this and we were able to take advantage of that. And again, by taking advantage of it, helping people. And so you can do that in any kind of role. Like, how can you evolve your role to create more value for the people around you? Maybe the person around you is your boss. Maybe the people around you are your coworkers, or maybe the people around you are your customers because you're a business owner. But the one of the worst things we can do in work life is to just be apathetic and just accept things for the way that they are. Now, you can't get to where you're just always trying to change everything, but I think it's good to have a kind of a humble mindset on how can I improve? How can I make things better than they are right now?
Yeah, I love that. I think walking through the world with that lens on of how can I add value to people is like what entrepreneurs do, but bringing it to the like where you are now, like in your role, say you're making $40,000 as an SDR, how can you add value to people in your role right now, around you, the customer, all that good stuff? I think that's a really good perspective to highlight for sure.
Thanks.
Just curious, a lot of entrepreneurs have trouble getting leads. And so you don't have to share tricks of the trade if you don't want to, but what is the way when you guys launch a new site? How do you guys generate leads for that site and get it profitable?
So it really kind of depends on your business. I think one of the best things is I'm a big believer in, if what I'm doing, people are going to want it, then I'm okay with a loss leader. I love getting people. The hardest thing to do with a brick and mortar location is to get somebody to step through your door the first time. And so if you can encourage people to come through and step through that door, like most of the businesses we do, it's come in, get the first time free. Now there's things like retail that you can't necessarily do that with. If you're selling clothing, if you're selling coffee or something like that, that can be a little bit harder to do because you don't have customer resource management software. But a lot of the things, the people that we like to help are things like gyms, where you do maintain records of people coming in. You know when somebody's first time coming, when it's somebody's first time coming through the door. So if you have some sort of service-based business, which is a lot of what we do, get people in the door. And I mean, look at like the old Netflix model, or like the app. I don't know if you ever signed up for an app on your phone where it's like, it's a 7-day trial. You put your card on file. You're not paying right now, but you do a 7-day trial. And at the end of the 7 days, they start charging you. You can cancel before that. No harm, no foul. You could do that we do that with business all the time, where you give them 30 days, come in, do your first month, work out, come in, do light therapy, whatever, come and get massage or whatever you're going to do. Like, let us sell you on this. Let us make this part of your life, because people don't like to undo their routine, right? If you're giving somebody a healthy new discipline, or a healthy new, part of their routine, they don't want to undo that. So if you can lock them in for a week of like, man, we got you in here 3 days a week. You were doing the infrared sauna 3 days a week. You're feeling really good. The last thing you want to do is cancel, like you're going to be willing to pay that. Especially with our business, with light therapy, it's kind of a new type of business for most people. They've heard about it, they've read about it, but that might not be something that they they might need to be won over on it first. And so we're willing to, because we believe in our services, we believe in what we do. I think that we're willing to do whatever we can to get people through that door the first time. So be welcoming, be encouraging, get people excited to come through that door. And you know what? I have friends in business that think that giving things away for free totally undervalues your business, and that it takes away the value proposition of what you're offering. I just don't subscribe to that idea. I think that once people feel it, they totally get the value proposition. And then they feel like you're being generous, because I think the people that say, oh, you got to charge for everything and you got to charge a premium service and all that kind of stuff, or a premium subscription. You know what? I think that sometimes customers don't realize, like, I think you're giving people an opportunity to recognize that you believe in what you're doing. And so we do think that there's a high value here. We just want you to try it because we know it's going to change your life. I think customers get that. And when you have that level of conviction in your business, it's contagious. People feel it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And people naturally reciprocate, right? So when you come at them with that level of belief, they're going to start to believe in your product more. When you come at them giving them free stuff, adding value to their life, they're going to want to add value back to your life. It's just how we work. So
yep. And you sound like a reader. So have you read Raving Fans before?
I have not read Raving Fans.
Okay. Raving Fans is like, it's the easiest read. If you read, I read slow, so it takes me a while. It takes me a few days. But if you're a quick reader, I mean, it's a small book. You read through it in probably a day. But it's just like, it's this corny little story, but you walk through and it's just like little anecdotes or almost little parables about customer service. But the whole point of the book is, how do you create raving fans in your business? Not just a satisfied customer. That's the whole thesis of the book, is that, most companies say we want satisfied customers. You don't want satisfied customers. You want raving fans. You want people that are marketing for you. Some of the most successful, I was talking to my buddy. I actually don't own any part of his gym, but he has a really successful gym here in Southern California. I was just talking to him today, and he doesn't spend a dime on marketing. His business is booming. He has about 2,000 people walk through the door every single day at his gym. It's like a 20,000 square foot gym, but it's popping all the time. And I look on his Instagram feed, and he has they probably repost, whoever runs his social media. It's like one of his employees that just does it while she's on the clock or whatever. They repost like 30 or 40 people's stories of other people posting about the gym, because at the gym you take pictures of yourself and you love to brag about it. And I said, man, that's crazy. You guys get like 30 or 40 people posting about you every day on Instagram. And he goes, oh, he's like, that's the tip of the iceberg. We probably get like 200 people posting about us every day. Those are just the ones that we repost. And he has raving fans. Like, he has people that are selling his business, and not only selling his business, but they're doing it organically. Like, they're not paid to do that. They're doing it because they want to. And so when you can get your customers to become raving fans, and not like, stop making the goal in your business to have satisfied customers. If you're an employee, don't have the goal to have a satisfied boss. Have the goal be to have a raving fan in your life. I mean, it's just that's just, you can, when you say that, you're like, oh, I see how that makes for a successful, enterprise, whether that's your business or, your work life or whatever.
Yeah, no, for sure. I've heard the raving fans, I think I read a podcasting book, and it was talking about, if you can get 1,000 raving fans for your podcast.
Yeah. So, there you go. Yep.
I love it. If there were one or two people that you can meet right now, and they really help you take the next step towards your dreams and goals, this could be a type of person or a specific person, who would that person be, and how would they help you?
Man, yeah, I don't know the specific person, but I never, like I met like I mentioned before, I was raised by my single mom, and so I didn't have like a strong male influence. Later on, like when I got to high school, I had some strong male influences, like in terms of pastors and stuff at the church, but never like that mentor that was just always around, and especially in my business life and stuff. So I think that it's funny because I'm 36, and I think a lot of people from the outside probably think I've got it together. Like, the business is done well, and I'm a best-selling author and all that kind of stuff. I would still, at this age, I would love a mentor. I would love somebody that has been through highs and lows. That could tell me that when they're, 70 years old, they could, and I can see, man, you're really, really successful. Like, how have you made it to 70 and you're still successful? And, somebody that could tell me like, yeah, well, I'm successful now, but like, you didn't see the years where it was a grind, or where like I had some success and then things dropped off. Like, I would love to learn and glean from people like that. Because I love to read history. I think there's a lot to be read from, like, learned from biographies and things like that. But I would love to have a mentor in my life that like had that real world experience. So yeah, I think that's something that I would like. Yeah, I think that would probably be it. That would probably be like the figurehead. So I don't have like a person in mind. So if you have somebody,
No,
you have
I
you have a
can't think of anybody.
65-year-old mentor, let them know.
We'll do. We'll do. That's what we'll be on the lookout for. Now we're gonna jump into our thriving three. First question: what's your favorite book, movie, or podcast? Pick one.
Okay. So, I mean, of course I would say the Bible. But I'm for the entertainment of your show, I'm not going to say that. Cause that actually that's good. Okay. So this is really bad. So this is like the opposite of the Bible. It's actually kind of a bad movie, but, I take encouragement from it. And so, have you ever watched the movie The Big Short?
Yes. Yes, I have.
Okay. Okay, I'm not suggesting your viewers go out to watch this movie, because there's actually a part with like some nudity in it and stuff.
Yeah, it
So
gets pretty rough at times.
yeah. It's kind of a gross movie on some parts, but I do like the fact that the whole kind of narrative of that movie is about these guys that they thought outside of the box. They found something. They found a flaw in the financial system. They found, like, they were the guys that discovered the 2008 financial crisis before it became a crisis, but they figured it out like years ahead of time. They figured it out in like 2005. And so everything that they saw was telling them like, hey, this collapse is going to happen. And so they knew they were right. They thought it was going to happen in like 2006. And so they made these big investments based on that information. And it turned out that it didn't happen until 2008. So these guys just had to eat a dirt sandwich for years, even though they were right. They knew they were right, and everybody's making fun of them. And so you had to see like this adversity that they had to go through, knowing they were right, but being unable to prove it, and just having to wait for the thing to happen. And so I think that that's so important for entrepreneurs, because there's like, when I started my business, we were talking about how to get leads and stuff like that. When I started my business, I wanted it to be making money right away. Like, the first year I lost money. The second year, my wife and I made a combined $4 an hour. Like, but so I had to change the metrics at which I knew we were doing something. I knew we were growing. I knew customers were loving their experience. I knew we were getting raving fans and stuff like that. But I had to change the metric. Instead of dollars, instead of how many sales we had that day, I had to look at how many new customer sign-up forms we had. That became the currency that I counted at the end of the day, because I knew, like, just like those guys in the movie, they knew that they were right. I knew we were onto something, but I had to kind of change temporarily the standard by which I was judging our success. And so, yeah, it was new customer acquisition. It wasn't dollars coming in. I knew if we got enough new customers acquired, that over time that they would lead to more new customers, and they would lead to more new sales. And sure enough, it did. But that, movies like The Big Short, as weird as they are, as worldly as they are, I find encouragement in seeing the suffering of other people. I mean, misery loves company, right? Like, when you're going through a hard time, you love to see that other people, went through something and came out and it was all gravy. So.
There we go. Yeah, I didn't notice that part of the movie specifically, and I like that you pointed it out. So that's really awesome.
Cool.
And what's one way you like to take care of yourself?
I love to be active. I gotta move. I gotta work out. I love training jiu-jitsu, man. If your listeners don't train jiu-jitsu, I think it's becoming very popular. Jiu-jitsu is like spreading around the world. Everybody's talking about jiu-jitsu right now. But there's a reason. There's a reason, because like I said, I've become friends with everybody that I've competed against. Even more so, the guys you train with every day, it's some of the tightest camaraderie that I've ever experienced, because you roughhouse with the boys for an hour, you're just dripping sweat, you're exhausted, you're tired. You got a muscular workout because you're pushing and pulling. You got an endurance workout. You got all these different things. But at the end of the day, so you're at the end of the session, you're exhausted, but then you're sitting around the mats and your guard is just like down. Like people are vulnerable, people are exposed. I've found that the easiest time I have sharing the gospel and having conversations about like what happens after you die. And I'm talking to atheists, I'm talking to guys, that are Muslim, or I'm talking to just people from different backgrounds. I've seen some of the biggest fruit happen on the mats after I just armbarred my friend and after my other friend choked me out and all these different things. Like this is just crazy. It's like pandemonium ensued. We were beating each other up. And now we're talking about like, what does it mean with my Christian friends? What does it mean to be like a good, godly father and stuff like that? And so, aside from the idea of like being able to defend myself, and aside from the idea of being able to defend my family, like the brotherly love that happens at the end of class is one of the coolest things. Yeah. So I love that the physical component, like the physical component keeps me feeling good. But that kind of emotional component is really helpful too.
I love it. It makes a lot of sense too, because when you are, especially the one-on-one, so that camaraderie comes out in team sports as well, like football, basketball, but in the one-on-one battle, in a competitive but not cutthroat sense, like you're not trying to kill each other in that moment when you very well could kill somebody with jujitsu.
Yeah.
It's like there's a level of trust there that is like, I'm going to put you in an arm bar, but I'm not going to shatter your arm, or I'm going to choke you out, but I'm not going to actually like kill you. And you're like, there's some trust there already. And so I like the guard down observation at the end of it, because it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Well, awesome, Brian. What is one action step you can take right now to meet that mentor who has been through those highs and lows?
Ooh. Well, I think that, it's funny because I've never said that. I've never told anybody that. So you've asked great questions. And so I think that you drew that answer out of me. So probably coming on your show today was probably the first step, but I would say, how can somebody else, not everybody's going to come on your show. I think it's just maybe asking yourself those questions, right? Like, I think that was important. So you drew something out of me. So probably, yeah, the next step would be to, maybe bring that up in conversation a little bit more, and bring that up and letting people know that are around me. Maybe in those post jiu-jitsu sessions where the guard's down, I can be a little bit more like, hey guys, like, here's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm looking to be held accountable. I'm looking for some mentorship. I think putting it out there is, it's going to be based on network effect. Like, I'm not going to just like put up a Facebook post and be like,
Yeah.
hey, I need a mentor. And that, I mean, maybe that happens, but it's probably going to be through the social network that I have of people, through the church or through, my community networks and stuff like that. So I think just being honest with people, I think that's going to be the next step, and not being afraid to look a little vulnerable.
I love it. I love it. Brian, I do have a couple more questions for you, but we are at time. So I know you got a class you got to teach your kids. Do you need to go right now?
You know what? I do. I hear them like running around out there. So
I got you.
yeah, man. All right.
I got you. I'll have to send you the other questions. You'll just have to send me your answers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brian, thank you for coming on the show. Guys, thank you for listening. We will see you on the next one. And on that note, we're out.